She grunts a lot this episode. I didn't mind it, but I hear you.
Yeah, I feel like that should be our intro for the episode instead of what we recorded.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe Podcast. My name's Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
You know, I'm okay. I've had a really busy week.
Yeah, I bet. Shazam out, right?
Well, Shazam is out, but what we've been covering, because we saw Shazam a few weeks ago, they dropped that Joker trailer.
Oh, yeah.
With Joaquin Phoenix. It looks fantastic. They also have the Gotham Joker trailer thing happening.
I saw that.
But then we also did a special episode for the 80th birthday of Batman that's going to drop soon. And we also have a Patreon episode where we break down Detective Comics 1000. So I've just been doing nothing but podcasts this week.
Wow. Well, I'm happy to throw another one at you. 'Cause getting you out of DC world, the Star Trek episode, I thought was pretty great.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Well, that's new.
Yeah. I like
and exciting.
Yeah, right. It is new and exciting. I just thought, I had issues, but, for the most part, I just really enjoyed the Pike stuff.
I really enjoyed the Pike stuff, but I think I hated everything else.
Interesting. There were moments with I felt the same way. That's definitely how I felt the episode was tilted. I love the Pike stuff. I love the Laurel stuff. I love the Ash Tyler stuff. But the Burnham stuff was weak. Yeah. I'm feeling more and more like the Burnham stuff is just like, here's an action scene going on while the character story is back on the ship. At least this episode felt that way.
In some ways, I feel like, Burnham was more of a Mary Sue here than she ever has been.
Interesting. Well, I think we should get to the summary real quick, right? So we can dive in. Spoiler alert, full spoiler alert, summary, go for it.
A fourth signal leads the USS Discovery to an insular world, that's Boreth, where Pike is forced to make a life-changing choice. Burnham and Spock investigate a Section 31 ship gone rogue, leading to a discovery with catastrophic consequences.
So, Mary Sue, you say?
Yeah.
I think that's a fair criticism of her character in general.
Okay. I wouldn't say always, but sometimes.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, she's the main character, and I think she's meant to sort of encapsulate these ideals that they're still trying to express with this show. And yeah, sure, she's made mistakes, so the Mary Sue argument. But I think the reason maybe that feels that way this episode is because, like, I'd like to hear why you feel that way, but I think part of the reason it may feel that way, my supposition would be, the whole point of this episode for her was to convince her that she was important and that she could change the future and that she is somehow central to this entire fight. Because the whole point was she lost faith in that at the beginning of this episode, and by the end she realizes that Control has it out for her. Yeah. And so that didn't bother me because I think that was the point of this episode. But what made her feel like a Mary Sue to you?
Mainly the fact that Control is just like, I need you. Like, why does it need her specifically?
Oh, I think that's because of the future. I think there's information we don't have yet.
Right. And I'm trying to keep that in mind, that Control does have knowledge of the future. So all these things that feel like plot conveniences might not be, and might actually be resolved in a satisfying way. I'm hoping that Control has some sort of knowledge of the future, so it's not just blindly planning, like, you know what, I'm gonna throw all these people out into the vacuum of space, including myself in this dude's body, because I think that they'll understand that it's like 10 minutes beyond their normal check-in point, and Burnham will show up. And then I can, that's just...
No, this is the Matrix 2. You gotta understand, this is the Matrix 2. This is, Control has done this
right.
an endless number of times.
I'm hoping that's the case.
And we know that's the case from the Red Angel. We know that the Red Angel has and Control, this episode says it always ends the same way. Like Control knows that it is going to achieve its goal, which is the end of all sentient life. Now, we had what we thought were two characters fighting for this future, which we thought were we thought were the Red Angel and Control. But now we know this third entity that is controlling the signals is somehow operating on a different wavelength from those three. And I have two theories about who those are. It's either Burnham in a way to, go back and cause the events that are leading up to what is about to happen. Or it's Georgiou saving Burnham's life. In a way, in some sort of sacrificial way that will lead to her doing something very hard, to bring Burnham, to bring Burnham through these trials or whatever. Like, maybe, I don't know. That was just a thought, because I think this episode is dripping with the fact that the red signals are Burnham. Because it just keeps saying, the Control, that character of Control says, even the mother and the daughter, they never succeed. Neither the mother nor the daughter ever succeed. Like, I think that they know that this Burnham doesn't know yet, but she is about to enter into some sort of time travel, time travel situation. Or she's about to enter into sort of like some sort of final fight with Control. And that some other character is going to be controlling these red signals to try to, and maybe they can't actually travel through time. Maybe they're just sending signals back from the future to guide the Discovery. But something is going to happen that's going to lead someone that we know to leave these clues for our trip. And it makes me really wonder still why the Terralisium, why the Terralisium signal. All the other signals saved Burnham's life, but why the Terralisium signal?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, I'm a little confused by the signals in general. Because I realized at this episode, I was like, didn't we know where all 7 signals appeared from the very beginning?
I thought we did.
I thought we did too, but this episode seems, and previous episodes, I'm still kind of piecing it all together, but it seems like somehow they know there are 7 signals. They all appeared at the same time all across the galaxy. That's what we know. But what does that mean in response to, like, why aren't they going to the last 3 signals now? If they know where they are, or at least like they should be conjecturing, they should be sending other Starfleet vessels to those 3 signals to start investigating before it ever shows up, Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't either. Didn't they do that with, because they showed up before the signal with, are
the signals top secret? Are they?
I don't know. At this point, you'd think they could at least bring other people in because they think all sentient life is going to be destroyed.
I mean, at the end of this episode, we have Section 31 ships, nearly the entire fleet. I wonder if the entire fleet is 31 ships.
Yeah, it made me think that too.
You have the entire fleet controlled by Control, and this, and Pike calls in the Enterprise. No other ship, just the Enterprise.
Well, he doesn't call in the Enterprise, does he?
Yeah.
I thought he just sent a message to the Enterprise, because I think he was trying to send a message. He said, send this message to the XO of the Enterprise. I think he's trying to send a message to someone he can trust.
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure he was calling them to come help.
Yeah, we saw in the next episode they're going to be there in the preview for next week. So you may be right. And they did say they were all going to try to get off of the ship. So I'm assuming, yes, that he's calling in the Enterprise somehow. You may be right, but I just assumed he was reaching out to someone he trusted is why he did that.
They're evacuating the ship. They've got a time crystal. I'm guessing the ship is going to wind up in 1,000 years in the future.
Well, ooh. Yeah, I thought about this while I was watching this episode, and I thought about the same thing. They were talking about abandoning the ship. They have the time crystal. They could jump forward, but what about... what if that AI that falls in love with craft is Control?
Yeah.
Or it is an AI on the ship that, somehow, because it is on the ship, it, absorbed the data from the sphere and it became sentient. That could be how it became sentient.
Yeah. All the data from hundreds of thousands of years, and all it did was learn to watch movies.
Yeah. Well, that gives credence to my idea from last week when we talked about the Vidraish and the possibility of them being control. We know that one AI in the future watches movies, so the Betty Boop makes even more sense that it might be the Vidraish. This is all kind of piecing together in a really weird slapdash way.
Yeah, completely throwing out like everything we've seen in Star Trek.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, what I mean is, if all of this Vidraish crap is, directly tied into control and everything we're seeing on Discovery, where does that leave anything in the quote-unquote prime timeline?
Well, I'm assuming that the battle that's happening now, when they send Discovery into the distant future, it would probably also somehow control goes into the distant future, and they start having a fight over the future.
Maybe.
And that kind of misses the canon that we know. But,
gotcha.
But that would be my theory, and that's literally just headcanon that I'm thinking up right now. I don't know.
Yeah. That might work.
Yeah. I could write this stuff.
Yeah, you could.
I'm just teasing. My dad, when we were growing up, anytime he predicted anything on TV, he would go, "I could write this stuff." And it was like this super annoying thing that we'd always pick on him for. He just, "I could write this stuff." And, so I just always liked to, it's an homage to my father.
Yeah. My dad does that too.
Yeah. Everybody thinks they could write this stuff. The D7, we got to see the D7 in person. That was kind of cool.
I guess.
I'm not, I'm sure, I'm assuming it had some about 25% different.
Far beyond that, I would say, but yeah, okay.
Well, it was generally shaped like that.
It was shaped generally like a Klingon vessel.
Yeah. I'm sure for you it probably would have been better if they left it on that hologram from a few episodes ago.
Yeah. You know what would have been better for me is if we didn't need to see it at all, because I thought the fact that L'Rell was there was stupid. Like,
I thought that on the first watch. I didn't think that on the second watch.
Oh. Did you glean a little more insight?
Well, why did you think it was stupid? Because I thought it was stupid for a specific reason.
I thought it was stupid because, she's got to take a whole D7 cruiser full of people to meet up with her ex, who's supposed to be dead, at the planet where her son, who is also supposed to be dead, lives. And you can't tell me someone on her crew doesn't want her taken out of the picture. Like, if they know that Voke/Tyler or their son is alive, the Empire's over.
Right. Sure. I think that's true, but I also think that, she just had a personal stake in investing in going there, I guess. And making
nothing
sure
the hologram couldn't do.
Goes right. Sure. I'm with you. I think it was a little silly, but I think it's a mother being a mother. I think she's going there to be protective, and I think maybe she is worried, and she shows that she's worried about Ash Tyler going down to that planet. She says, "No, you're not allowed to go down there," and he's like, "You're not my commander anymore, I'm not under your command." But then his commander says, "You're not allowed to go down there." So okay, so let's get to the meat. The meat of this episode for me was Pike.
Yeah, that was a really nice scene, like, for me, ensconced in a bunch of horse crap.
What you mean the episode, the Pike storyline was horse crap except for that moment?
I mean, like, all the context surrounding Pike. Like, it's like, oh, you can't, you won't be able to handle the time crystal, son. You can't do this. And then he goes and he looks, and he's like, yeah, all right. I mean, it was more dramatic than that. He's like, all right, you can have the time crystal. Like,
oh no, I thought it was beautiful. That was Fable level magic to me. I loved that.
I hated it. I think that's why I hated it.
The idea of seeing your own, but it's science and magic sort of mixed together. I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was great. The idea of you see your own, the sacrifice you have to make is you seeing a horrible future. And then you have to choose whether to lock that in or not.
So, okay, he's given the time crystal.
Yep.
Is the test that he won't change the future, given that he has the time crystal? Is that the test?
No,
if he chooses to like save himself, then that means he's selfish. But if he chooses, oh no, I'll accept my fate if I can save the galaxy, he's worthy of having the time crystal. Like, is it a great power comes great responsibility and you have to pass a test type of situation? Or is it just like this is locked in. You have to have this fate unless you have the time crystal.
No. You have to have this fate if you take the time crystal. The time crystal is showing you, if you take this crystal, this is your fate. And it always shows you the most horrible moments of your life. Mm-hmm. And so that's the point of the crystal. It's like, you take this crystal, this is locking you into your fate. Like if he decided to not take that crystal, he could have changed the future. But because he grabs that crystal, it's locking him into that fate. Now, sure, you could say, why is he ever going to go in a room with a bunch of trainees? Mm-hmm. That's fine. And there could be some headcanon around that if I wanted to, but sure, that's a little dumb. Like you act like you're taking free will out of the equation and you're not. He could still make decisions that lead him away from that. But we've seen we've seen lots of canons where someone knows something about the future and they try to prevent it and it just ends up causing it, And I think that, and he's taking it on faith. Like, he doesn't know for sure that this is going to lead him to that, but he is taking it on faith that in this moment, like, it doesn't matter to me whether the crystals work or not. It's the idea that it's showing him something so horrible and he has to make the decision to embrace that. Is the crystal there worth his horrible end? And I think everyone has to make that same choice. It shows them the worst moment of their life, and then they have to make a choice as to whether it's worth taking the crystal or not. I love that.
I was a little confused, obviously, but like if someone had like a really good life and nothing really bad happened to him, like ever. Yeah,
I thought about that too.
What happens? Like,
well, I think the point is everyone has bad moments in their life.
Touch this crystal and see your worst moment. Oh man, I had to take a really painful shit one time.
Right.
And then I died happily in my own home, surrounded by my family.
Well, see, that's the thing. Pike has a really horrible thing happen to him, but that's not his end. We know
it's not.
We know that he ends sort of on a happy note, sort of deciding to embrace a delusion, but still, it's a happy ending to his life. He makes a huge difference in people's lives. The one thing I didn't like about that scene, I wish he had saved that last crewman, but I don't think he does. I think she dies with him, or gets hurt with him. Because it would have made it more powerful to me if he's deciding to do something that he knows, like in the future, unfortunately he knows that crewman doesn't make it out of that radiation chamber with him. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he goes back to save her is kind of dumb for future Pike. Like, she's gonna die. You've seen it in the crystal. But I guess even that, like, you know things are gonna happen, but that doesn't change who you are.
Yeah. There's that, and also memories fade. Like, if, he's experiencing all of that one time.
Yeah, that's true.
Very quickly.
That's true. And probably the more memorable thing is the horror show of his face dripping off.
Which I don't remember his face dripping on the original series.
No, I thought that was, I think part of the reason they did that was to, make it more palatable to people who did remember very clearly what he looked like in the original series, because I think that was supposed to be metaphorically how he saw himself.
Yeah, I'm just really picking at myself now.
Right. Okay. Let's see. I loved Pike's snow outfit.
His snow outfit.
I did. Oh. I want one.
You would.
But more importantly, Pike's moment on the ground where it's my favorite quote of the episode by far. I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. When he says, "You're a Starfleet captain. You believe in service, sacrifice, and compassion in love." Mm-hmm. And then he decides to go through with it. Oh.
Yeah, I have that written down as one of my favorites. And, I didn't hate everything in this episode, but I did feel like they were kind of going crazy with the time stuff. Like,
to me, it was no different than the time stuff we experienced with like the prophets. Like this to me walked that same sort of line. And you could science away all this stuff. You could science away that, like, the crystal searches your future and for whatever reason shows you the times where your body is flooded with certain fear chemicals or something. You know, like, it's going to show you the most horrible moments of your life because of some scientific mumbo jumbo reason. They didn't get into that. They didn't go there. I would have been fine with them going there. I would have been fine if a science officer was with him and was like, oh, this is nothing about fate. This is science because it's finding the time when your body's flooded with this chemical, and so it just shows you that. It's connected to the metals in the cave, blah, blah. They could have done that.
Yeah.
But to me, that, I can headcanon all that stuff. To me, it just made for a beautiful decision he had to make. To me, that makes the entirety of, his episode from the original series more beautiful because the pains he's going through are pains that not only did he choose to do the right thing in saving these crewmen or trying to save these crewmen, he chose to do this knowing that it would lead to this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I loved it so much. From a character moment perspective, I just really loved that.
And I enjoyed that from, like, I loved how haunted he was later on in his ready room.
Me too.
And I love that it also means that he can make, like, big decisions. He can, as you put it, take big swings now because he knows where he's going and he knows what's going to happen to him at some point and that it's not here.
That's interesting. That is an interesting point. Like, how will this change his character going forward? Will he be more reckless knowing that I don't know. I feel like he is such a man guided by the, like, Starfleet principles that he believes in so strongly that it won't change him all that much. Like, he will go on believing that he is to live in service, sacrifice, and compassion and love. Like, that's what his guiding principles, and he's going to stick to those, you know? I loved it. It reminds me, what you're bringing up though reminds me a little bit of Saru. Like, in this episode, he says he's a different kind of captain now. Thought that was neat, that we got to see a little glimpse of that again. And how it impacted Burnham. But that reminds me of, maybe we'll get a different Pike going forward. I think we already did at the end of this episode. Like you said, he's so haunted. And it was really, really beautiful when he says that, that experience was only for me or whatever. I didn't write it down, but.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah. That was good. Like, he killed it. If there was anything for me that really made the episode work, because, you know, it's not just like my little logic problems. I mean, that's fine. I'm glad that you're, you know, doing a pretty good job of explaining away my problems. The episode was still boring to me.
Interesting. I did not find it boring. I found it, you know, it felt very First Contact, all the Borg, I'm calling it Borg stuff. I'm calling it Borg stuff not because I did think that Control is the Borg, but I feel like there's two things they're driving home this episode. I feel like they're trying to convince us that the Control is the Borg, and they're trying to convince us that Burnham is responsible for the signals. And I don't know if either of those things are true or if they're misdirects, but with that eyeball shot of the needle heading toward the eyeball, that is so First Contact. Everything Control is doing is green. Like, all the nanites. I feel like it's future Borg.
Yeah. That's definitely the feeling I'm getting, which makes me automatically think it's not going to be that.
Yeah, me too.
But we've got some feedback. Well, I'll get to some of that.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
I hated the auto antonym game.
Why? I think I enjoyed that.
Because it's a very finite game. Like, that's not a game. That's a conversation. It's not a game. Like, you can't play that game over and over.
I did wonder how that game worked with, like, alien,
like,
languages.
Translators, yeah. Now that's the one I thought, okay, maybe my headcanon, because I'm having to headcanon a fucking game, because that's the kind of broken I am. But maybe my headcanon was, maybe this game could go on a long time if you include all languages. Like, maybe they're discussing all the auto antonyms from all languages. Maybe you could come up with some things. But if you're just talking English, and does that mean that bug creature is speaking English, or is he using the translator? I don't know. The whole thing, it was rot for me. Mm-hmm. But not from I wasn't even thinking about all those canon issues of the translator. I was just thinking of, like, that's a finite game. It's a very finite game. You play it once, you come up with all of them. There's probably a list. I could Google auto-antonym right now and find a list of auto-antonyms in the English language, and that's probably all of them.
Yeah.
Just felt weird. It felt weird. Like, if you have a conversation about it, like, I could see an alien picking on the humans because their language has auto-antonyms in it. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a conversation that would happen on a ship. It's not a game you can repeatedly play.
Well, what if there were, like, what if, like, slang was also included? Like, you know, since we've been adults, so many words have been introduced.
Yeah, but then you just introduce the idea that language is constantly changing. I'm assuming they're using the current form of the language that they're currently in, which doesn't, yes, it changes quickly, but it doesn't change so quickly that you could play that game every week.
I mean, who knows? They didn't say they're playing it every week, did they?
No, but she says we're playing the auto-antonym game. I'm just a big fan of games as well as of all this stuff. I love games. I love thinking of games. I love, like, game structure, and that's just not a game. Like, it's just not a game.
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to, evoke the ire of the gaming elitist.
I'm a big gaming elitist. Like, I think it's very important a game have certain things and elements that make it a game. And that seems like just a thing you would run out really quickly. And sure, that's not the only game that works that way. Yeah, no, I think it is. That's not how games work. Like, you could have had a conversation without calling it a game. But I'm sorry. I'm being super picky. I didn't really care. It just felt like, oh, look, they're trying to give them fun conversation. Like, that, it didn't feel like this is natural at all.
Because this is Star Trek. People play auto-antonym games. They're not real people.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool that Voq and L'Rell's son was an adult.
I didn't like it.
I know that there were theories about him being the assassin from DS9, which would be really cool and could still be true. We don't know. Because apparently he can travel through time, and time flows differently for him. So it's very possible that something happens in the future that he has to leave that planet and go do those things.
Yeah, whatever the hell that means. Time flows differently for the keepers of the crystals. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought that was cool. I like the unexpected nature of it. I like what it could lead to. We could have more interactions with him, and like, I don't know, I just like they've introduced a lot of cooler characters. It's like, I was thinking a lot about Ash Tyler this episode, because he's our connection to the Klingon Empire, and he's our sort of like, he's like our Klingon Empire Wikipedia on the show. But they still made him a human, because at this point you can't have a Klingon serving on a Starfleet vessel, but I don't know. I enjoy the idea of a human with a Klingon inside of him. That's just cool. And I just like that, I enjoy the idea of a Klingon that was raised quickly in a monastery that, I don't know, son of the emperor and a half Klingon, half human. I don't know. It's neat. It's all just cool, sort of cool storytelling.
You said, you like the idea of a Klingon inside of a human, and the first thing I thought of was like, oh, I know what your porn searches look like.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And how? What? Any other thoughts on this episode before we move to quotes?
Well, okay. First of all, let me say something positive. I really loved all of the dissolves in this episode. Like, they did some really cool shots, like where we see like Boreth and we see the Discovery spore drive in, and then we see it kind of shimmer and it becomes the little console in Tyler's quarters or whatever it was.
Neat. Yeah, they've been doing some really cool transitions the last few episodes.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed that. It was confusing for just a second, because I was like,
where am I?
A little bit, where it was like Saru and Michael are talking, and then like the scene ends on like a close up of Saru, and then his face melts into like flame and like embers, and I was like, oh, that's not Saru. Oh wait, no, this is just Boreth. Never mind.
Yeah, that's neat.
I thought it was interesting, and we kind of touched on it, but I kind of hate it and kind of love it at the same time, because it feels like we have at the end, Pike orders the self-destruct for the Discovery, basically.
Yeah.
And that's how they're going to destroy the sphere data. And what did we do this episode for? But if we didn't have this episode and he didn't know what his future was, he might not have made that decision.
Yeah. I do think that maybe destroying the Discovery could have been brought up sooner. Maybe they could have brought it up and had a good reason not to do it.
Like, it's all sentient life in the universe. Maybe we die.
Well, not even die. In this episode, they're not talking about dying. They're talking about getting in some escape pods.
I know, but they're like, their chances of survival go way down if they're just floating around in little escape pods.
Maybe. They get into escape pods, and then I have a feeling the sphere isn't going to allow them to destroy the Discovery. Or that some form of control is going to stop them from destroying the Discovery.
What if the data from the sphere itself becomes the kernel for the AI that is in Calypso? What if it's not even control?
Yeah, it's very possible. Some combination of those two things, like just what we were talking about earlier. Yeah, could be anything. Because the data from the sphere is just, I think it's just data, just information. But some form of processing AI on the ship could easily adapt it, just like anything on the ship, and use it to gain sentience. Because that's what Control is trying to do, and so that's obviously a possibility.
Yeah. I'm going to say this. I think it was dumb that Burnham and Tyler didn't realize, was it Tyler? No, sorry. Burnham and Spock didn't realize that Cameron Gant was basically Control, because I knew it from the second we saw him.
Well, I don't think that's, I don't think that's dumb, because I think what Control was playing three-dimensional chess, as it were. Which I think is an interesting thing. They keep talking about three-dimensional chess and that is a term we use today for playing the game behind the game, which I think is very much what Control is doing here, because Control has done this. I think Control has done this exact thing multiple times, this exact moment, and has tried out different crew members to. So
it was going to choose a crew member that she had an emotional connection to.
Exactly. And I thought, that was super interesting. They do multiple things this episode to specifically trap Burnham. And, I thought that was all cool and reveals a lot about what, the powers and the sort of specific knowledge about Burnham that, Control seems to have. Because it obviously chose that crewman to distract her from, and it also, they throw something out there about it, masking its scent to the tricorder. But even above that, like, I think choosing someone that she is very happy is alive and happy to see. Like, I think that was important to Control, to convince Burnham to be distracted enough to not notice that it was, like, maybe some other crew member she would have had more, suspicion for.
I mean, I like that explanation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on with Control this episode where it's showing its hand in how important Burnham is to it. They make that really clear. They say in this episode she's the best vehicle for getting to Discovery, which is probably true, but Spock seems to take that as she is more important, and they know the threat that she raises. And he's looking at the bigger picture of her mother, himself, the Discovery, all the things that the AI is doing all around Burnham.
Which, the way Control said that about, like, neither you or your mother, it makes me feel like they're going to be like, the answer is we have to work together.
Interesting. I didn't think that. I thought that was just Control talking trash to try to discourage Burnham.
Yeah, it might be me just watching too much CW.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Just like, okay, they're gonna have to work together. Ugh.
Yeah, they wear their, character development on their sleeves on those shows.
A bit. Yeah.
And not that this show, it's just a little under the surface, which I like. I kind of, there's various levels that you can kind of hide the character development under the plot. And I don't know. It's all a taste thing, because obviously there's, shows like, I don't know, whatever procedural is popular at the time, whether it's like NCIS and those shows are just like big, broad swaths, characters going through things and talking about them, you know? And then you got things like Westworld where everything is under the surface. And this is somewhere in between those two things. And I think this is more my speed.
Yeah. So one more little gripe point. I didn't understand why she was so ardently shooting with one then two phasers at the nanite blob or whatever.
Right.
Because clearly it wasn't working.
Well, slowing it down.
And, I didn't get the feeling it was slowing it down.
Oh, I
only
did.
watched it once.
Yeah. I have seen it twice. So I have the benefit of that. But yeah, no, it was definitely slowing it down. It was causing it, cause it was moving at a pretty quick speed toward her. And every time she blasted it, it would just kind of like delay it a second. So she's trying to slow it down while Spock is trying to do something to stop it, which they magnetize the hull, but they don't do anything to kill it. So is it still just magnetized to the hull?
I guess so.
Control is still there, just magnetized to the hull?
I guess so.
Of course, it doesn't really matter because control is everywhere, apparently.
Yeah, I feel like they're like, we need some sort of tangible representation here. I really hated the way she was grunt screaming as she was firing. I hated it so much.
She grunts a lot this episode. I didn't mind it, but I hear you. When Spock says he's coming with her, she says she makes the funniest noise. She goes like, "Ah."
Yeah, I feel like that's that should be our intro for the episode instead of what we recorded. Like this week. Instead of that, just saying she grunts a lot this episode.
Right, coming up right after this.
Yeah. All right, you want to get to quotes, man?
Yeah, man. Let's get to quotes. I already said my favorite one, but I'm going to say it again because I just love it so much. You're a Starfleet captain. You believe in service, sacrifice, compassion, and love. I liked it a lot. I just really liked that moment. The quote isn't so much the amazing thing as just like the way he delivers it and the sort of labored way that he kind of fights to express it. I just loved it.
I liked the way that this sounded. It was Tenovic telling Pike, warning him about the time crystals. He says, "A warning, Captain. The present is a veil between anticipation and horror. Lift the veil and madness may follow." I liked that.
Oh yeah. Great quote. I think, although I enjoyed the other one, because of the context, I think that's actually my favorite quote from the episode. It's really good. I liked, they enter with conviction always. They leave broken always.
That was pretty good.
Just enjoyed it. The sinister nature of it.
I only have one more, and it's from a segment of the show we didn't even talk about. It's, from Jet Reno telling Culber, "It's funny. People like us always find people like them. And thank God you have a second chance and it may not last forever. Don't screw it up."
Yeah, I liked that one too. I also liked, I only wish you told me so you wouldn't have to carry it alone. I liked that. I liked that it wasn't, the motivation for her wanting to know wasn't that she felt betrayed for not knowing, but that she cared for him and didn't want him to have to be so lonely.
Which, seems antithetical to everything we've seen her do so far. Like, her, running up to him and screaming at him about something Section 31 did and how he can be a part of it. And it just seems like she's always very, reactive to everything he does. So, I felt like this, I liked that line mostly because I was relieved that we wouldn't have to go through that again. But it also felt like Burnham was in some sort of meta fourth wall breaking type of way going, "We have a lot to get to this episode, so I'm going to let this one slide."
Interesting. I thought, to be honest, I'm a little fuzzy on the details of when and where they had certain conversations, but I thought that they recently had a conversation where they kind of came to terms with each other and trying to, saying, yes, we love each other, but, don't know that I can trust you like that, but I do love you. And so I think that's where they are at this point. And I think that, some of those conversations you're talking about where she's yelling about what Section 31 is doing, I think that's just professional stuff. Like, it's not necessarily getting in the way of their personal relationship.
That's not professional. When she's like in tears and saying like, how can you be a part of this? Like, that's not professional.
Right. But he's also left, basically, for all intents and purposes, left Section 31 at this point.
Has he?
I mean, like, the version of it that is out there, that is currently surrounding them and ready to kill them.
Right. Well, I mean.
Yeah, like, that's what I mean. Like, I think he has realized that they're on the same side now. I think, like, before she thought, when she's crying to him, she's like, you're standing on the opposite side of this battlefield from me. And why are you doing that? And now the battle lines have been drawn differently now. And so they're sort of back to status quo, I guess.
Maybe. I mean, there's no Section 31 right now.
Right.
And maybe that's why no one knows about them in the future. Maybe this is the official end of Section 31. The official.
I think it is. I think that's true.
All right. So we got a little feedback. Do you have any more quotes?
No, that is all my quotes.
All right. We have some feedback from Kyoki Young.
Hey, Kyoki. He writes over at the MCU Cast.
Oh, cool.
Thanks for coming over.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, buddy. He says, hi, Matt and Dave.
Hello.
We already said hi. We already said hi, Matt.
I say hi multiple times. They call me 3 High.
All right. That shouldn't have been as funny as it was.
Nope.
Kyoki says, I'm writing you in regard to your recent cast, in which you mentioned the theory that control might become the Borg. While it's an interesting idea, I sincerely hope this isn't the case, since it wouldn't make much sense after the events of First Contact, where the Borg traveled in time to prevent the Federation from forming. If control becomes the Borg, and the Borg stop the formation of the Federation, then the Borg would presumably be keeping themselves from ever existing. Maybe the Borg don't realize this, but they usually seem pretty well informed. In Enterprise, Borg survivors from First Contact are awakened on Earth to menace Archer and friends. Archer and friends. What if Section 31 salvaged some technology from these Borg to create control? I doubt Discovery will go for this, as it'd make for a pretty convoluted storyline. But it also pose an interesting paradox. The Borg spring from control, which only exists because the Borg came from the future. Could it be, then, that the Borg realized this time loop existed and went back to First Contact to ensure that it started? Kind of hurts my brain just thinking about it. Live long and prosper. Kyoki from Seattle. All right.
That is interesting. Okay, so a couple things. Depends on how time travel works. Because if this version of control is from a future where all this has already happened and it's just interacting with our timeline, then all of that doesn't matter. Secondly, I don't think that control becomes the Borg. If anything, I think the Borg would become control.
Okay.
That's at least the way I'm reading it now. Like, I don't know what I said 2 episodes ago because I'm a fickle human being, but I don't think that I think this version of control is way too advanced for who the Borg are when we meet them in the 24th century or whatever. I think that, if anything, control is a version of the Borg from 500 years in the future where it is fighting the Red Angel or whatnot. Or actually the Red Angel came from even further in the future. But where it is coming back to end sentient life so that it can exist in a world free of sentient life. Like it's coming back and creating a timeline where all sentient life is destroyed so that it can go forth and live. But it's confusing because it is not possible, because if we're having these arguments over the timeline being constantly rewritten, then the version of time travel they're using doesn't really make sense with the kinds of paradoxes we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear in Star Trek that multiple versions of time travel exist. The way I headcanon that is it just depends on the execution of the time travel.
Yeah.
Which would make sense because parallel realities also exist in Star Trek. But we've literally seen, like, we've watched, the Trouble with Tribbles and then seen Trials and Tribulations where suddenly there are DS9 characters in the background where there were not DS9 characters before. So there's got to be some version of time travel where they can overwrite stuff. This happened before. But obviously they employ the multiple universe theory as well in time travel. So
yeah,
I have to headcanon some sort of like there's an execution clause.
yeah. But I think, but again, I think if they're going to go with the Borg, which I don't think they are, I think making it green was an intentional misdirect. I do. Because the main thing about the Borg is a hive mind. This episode, not only did they bring in the green, but they also brought in, Leland did this too, I believe. He starts speaking in a Borg-like voice, that sort of hive-mindy voice, which is sounds sort of like a robot coming through. I think they're intentionally dropping these sort of Easter eggs that feel like the Borg, but I don't think it is, because the Borg is a hive mind that is trying to incorporate all sentient life into itself. The thing is about Control is it is not trying to incorporate sentient life. It is trying to gain its own sentience. So I think in a way they are polar opposite, which can happen over 500 years of technology advancement. Maybe they realize, screw all this sentient life. Let's just, maybe the assimilation of the sphere's knowledge is a very similar tactic. They're sort of trying to assimilate all cultures at once. So they get all of the knowledge of all the cultures and they'll just go forward with their own sentience. So in a way, you could say that's Borg-like, but in a way it's like the opposite of the Borg in that it wants to have its own sentience. It doesn't want to incorporate it just wants to incorporate knowledge. It's not trying to incorporate other cultures and other technologies.
But, Alex Kurtzman is a big TNG fan.
Oh, yeah?
So, that's kind of where he came into the Star Trek fandom. I do wonder, with as sloppy as they've been at times, I am wondering if they're going to try to create some sort of situation where, Control finally does get to to all that data and then realizes, for me to truly evolve, we have to evolve to include the synthetic.
You mean the organic?
The organic must evolve to include the synthetic. I was referring to First Contact, but I screwed it up.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I think there's definitely ways they could make it work, but I don't think they're gonna. I don't know. Maybe though. I almost feel like if they were going for the Borg, they would have gone for it by now.
I might argue they already have.
Oh, by teasing it.
Yeah.
The thing is, maybe not anymore. Back when they made Voyager, they believed that using the Borg was a great PR move for the show. Hey, you liked First Contact. Why don't you have 4 seasons of Borg? Want another helping of Borg this week? They really, really overdid the Borg on Voyager and to the point that it kind of lost its menace. And obviously they had a Borg crew member, all this stuff is what they did on Voyager, and maybe they want to have their cake and eat it too, where they're teasing the Borg and maybe they'll even end up being Borg at the end of the season, but it's not going to be I almost feel like they would have just said, hey, it's the Borg, because they maybe could have used that to promote the show a little bit. I don't know, but maybe not. Maybe we would have all just been like, oh gosh, they're doing Borg. Whereas sprinkling it in might be having their cake and eating it too.
Yeah, I don't think announcing anything helps them.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. Announcing anything at all about Star Trek gets half of the population of Star Trek fans mad, if not more.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think maybe this is their backdoor way of getting to Borg by the end of the season. Maybe we are going to encounter 29th century Borg or whatever that are part of this temporal Cold War or something.
But I feel like if what Keoki says here is true, where he says, I doubt Discovery will go for this, as it make for a pretty convoluted storyline, it would also pose an interesting paradox. The Borg spring from Control, which only exists because the Borg came from the future. Could it be that the Borg realized this time loop existed and went back to First Contact to ensure that it started? That would make First Contact make sense for me in a way that it never has before.
Interesting.
Because First Contact Like, I feel like, why would you go back to first contact? Why wouldn't you just go back further to where, like...
There's a certain cold logic to it. Like, they went back to the earliest time, or the closest time that there's a element of preservation of resources. If it costs any extra resources to go further back in time, that's one thing. But also, if you go back in time a certain amount, then you're literally, your drones that you're sending back have more of a possibility of making it to the future that you're currently in. So it's possible they literally like analyzed the timeline and they were like, this is the earliest point where the Vulcans won't be involved. So we're going back directly to that moment.
Yeah.
What they didn't expect was the Enterprise to be able to follow them.
Right. Well, that's what happens when you create a temporal wake.
That's right. Golly. Gosh. By the way, I've really been enjoying lately on, over on the Marvel cast, we've been talking about, various parts of the canon, and I've been, for whatever reason, giving a lot of headcanon practice. Probably because there's little flaws here and there. So I'm like, oh no, you could make that make sense through da-da-da-da-da. And I've gotten multiple people writing in saying, thanks for that, Matt. Really helped me watch the show because you headcanoned that well.
Yeah.
And I've been sort of proud of my headcanoning ability lately.
Yeah.
Which is such a stupid thing to be proud of.
Oh, I mean, I like this idea from Kyoki, but the way I've always made first contact work for me is that I've just headcanoned the idea that they went back to that point in time because they said not only is Earth a real threat to the Borg, but the Federation in general is. So you go back, you hide in some like low level technology, maybe the Phoenix, let things go as planned, and then not only do you assimilate Earth, you assimilate the Vulcans if all goes to pot.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is a possibility. Yeah. Good conversations. I really love Star Trek. I really enjoy this whole canon and talking about it. It does my heart good to be like having these conversations again. You know what I mean? Like these conversations is exactly why I wanted to start this podcast. Like looping me back into like 13-year-old Matt's like thoughts on first contact. All right. Well, I think that's about it, right? Do we have any trivia?
I don't actually.
Right. Well, that's cool. I'm going to throw in some trivia. The accident that was shown in this episode was first mentioned on the TOS episode. Fill in the name, Dave.
The Menagerie.
Thank you. All right. Trivia fulfilled. Thank you, guys. Have a good one. Peace.
Live long and prosper, y'all.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.